Okay, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. So great to see you all, and happy Monday. So this session will be over building your theory of action. This is part one of the session. We can go to the next slide. So the overview for today, we have four sections. The first section is root cause analysis, and then we'll talk about the ideal state, review that. Then we'll go into theory of action 101. And thanks, Alex, for dropping the deck, and then or for notes, and then evolving role of the teacher researcher. Next slide, Alex.
Yeah, and then in the link that I just shared is the note catcher. Within that is the link to the slide deck as well.
Yeah,
To not,
thanks, Alex.
yeah, to not inundate you with links in the chat.
So the objectives. Number one, at the end of the session, you will have reviewed your district's emerging root causes. So I know we've spent some time talking about this in our coaching calls, but we'll give you a little bit more time to review the process and your root causes to make sure that it's systems level. You have revisited your district ideal state statements and had time to review them and make sure that they're in a good place. You've been introduced to the theory of action framework, and you'll be prepared to begin drafting your district's theory of action. And then you'll be ready to understand the evolving role of the teacher researcher through the remainder of the project. So we'll talk about the teacher researcher transitioning from their current role to more of a consultant role. So section one, root cause analysis. So we are going to take a few minutes, and we would love to hear both of your districts talk about these three questions. So the first question is, where did the 5 whys take you, and what did you uncover? And then the second question is, what did you identify as your true root causes or cause? And then what, if any, system level causes came up repeatedly? So we have 3 questions. We would love to hear from both districts answering these questions. So whoever wants to jump in first, please do.
Okay, so I think with us, when we kept looking at the whys, it really narrowed it down to the PLC issue, and we really felt like that would take care of some of the other issues. Because well-planned teachers can handle well-planned classrooms. So that's kind of what I think. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Okay.
I think I would just add to that the thing about PLCs is that we discovered that teachers value it. They understand what its purpose is, but really their heart is it's not being protected. And so then that lends to the systems discussion where it's the outside. What we've discovered is like the outside entities like secretaries and things like that would interfere with PLCs. So that's a systems topic that we needed to look at. Also, we identified just building the understanding deeply of what all the things are that could happen in a PLC and what kind of things should not happen in a PLC. So that's some of the systems level work that we've already started this past summer.
Yep, I agree.
Thanks for sharing that.
So this is very helpful because we also landed on the same thing. We actually did a root cause analysis of their planning time not being protected and PLC time. So the end of the root cause analysis, when we were starting to talk about the ideal state, we did go with the PLC root cause analysis being kind of like the highest leverage. So if we can protect that time, define that time. We are feeling like some of it might be a little bit different at the secondary level versus our primary and elementary level. And so differentiating the PLC structure and time, but at a systems level, we do need to give them the parameters and the expectations for that. And so we felt like there's definitely a shift, and we struggled with not getting too much into the weeds of each campus's needs and trying to keep it high level at an ideal state. So again, it might be master scheduling that's going to end up being a concern or something for us to address and implement at the district level. And then team, y'all want to add anything to it from the root cause analysis? I see Debbie's on here, Lingo's on here. Anything to add?
Well, as Dr. Tate said, at the secondary level, high school struggling with the master schedule to have common planning time for our departmental teachers, and then in the needs across the different departments varies, and so we were trying in the past like a one size fits all PLC time, which wasn't meeting the needs of all of our teachers. So that's definitely a work on for us.
And then at the, we discussed at the primary elementary levels, they do have a common planning time, and they've even been able to add the special ed teachers in that's helpful. But they're still struggling with a lot of the interruptions with all the different meetings or parent contacts. There's a lot more parent contact at the primary elementary level than there is at the secondary level. So that does take a lot of their planning time when they're having to contact parents on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would agree with Dr. Tate that we had that discussion when we were going through the root analysis activity with the Temple team. And I believe Barbara could probably speak up and better to this in the secondary world, but there were things that we identified that were like needs at the secondary that weren't needs at elementary. And so narrowing down our work down to what we've kind of honed in on, we felt like if we could address these things, that should help take care of some of those secondary things that were only specific to a group of people, so that we're working as a district and systematically than trying to like separate out, trying to do two different things.
Yeah, I think that the hunch for secondary people is like, we're special, it should be different. Because I think a lot of times, elementary and middle schools tend to be state tested driven, where we have different tests that drive instruction for AP, IB, CTE, things like that. But I think the kind of the heart of it, like Dr. Watson was saying, I think is the big thing. But I do think the interruptions are different. And then with having coaching, it just not instructional coaching, but coaches that are here like from 5 a.m. to midnight sometimes. Like sometimes those things have to be done during the day, but trying to be more creative on how that's not during a PLC.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for sharing. That's really helpful. And we talked internally about how we were excited to hear that y'all's root cause was aligned. And so we thought that would be really helpful as we do these calls together. So thank you all for the work with that. We're going to then transition to, now that we've landed on our root cause, we're going to introduce you all to a systems level reflection checklist. And this is going to help you reflect on the process that you took for your getting to your root cause analysis. So in the chat, Alex just dropped the actual checklist. So you're going to go into your breakout rooms. You'll have about 7 minutes to go into your breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, you'll you spend about 7 minutes looking at this checklist. And the end is, if all boxes are checked, you have a strong indication of a systems level root cause. And this is thinking specifically about your root cause. If more than half of the boxes are checked, you may want to consider refining the language or the focus of your root cause so that it is more systems level. If it is less than half of the boxes are checked, you may not be addressing a systems level issue. And so then we would push you or encourage you to revisit the 5 whys. I don't think that'll be the case with either of these groups, but this is how to use the checklist. Can we go to the next slide, Alex? So you'll spend seven minutes as a district in your breakout rooms reviewing your root cause analysis to determine if it's systems level. We want you to discuss each item aloud as a group before deciding on a yes or a no. So go through each one of the boxes. If there's a disagreement, your root cause may need more clarity or refinement. So disagreement in this case is good because it'll cause discourse, and then we'll get to, is it a yes or is it a no? So any questions before we go into our breakout rooms? And again, the checklist has been dropped in the chat. And we really quickly, I know we gave some additional time in the breakout, but would love to hear from both districts. Did you land on a yes, or where did you land from the checklist? Would love to hear from both districts.
So personally, I loved the last box where it says the cause is specific enough to act on, but broad enough to support meaningful system change. I think that encompasses the whole thing of what we have been hearing the teacher researchers saying and trying to really understand the importance of what one interruption can do to just derail things. So, but we went through the checklist and we really had good conversation. But I just love that last box. I thought that was great.
And same for us. We went through each, it helped us make sure that we were at a systems level. For us, all but one of the boxes was checked. And so we do feel like we have a strong indication of a system level root cause that we need to work on.
Thanks. And was it the same for you all, Temple? How many boxes did y'all have checked? Were they mostly all, or?
We checked all the boxes. The one that really caused the most conversation was systematic shifts, policy changes, structural redesign, or role clarification. But because it had the or in there, we know role clarification is major. So
Okay.
we were able to talk that through. But yeah, we checked everything.
Okay. All right.
We're going to jump into section 2 now and do a brief review of the ideal state discussions that you all had. So similar to what we did with the root cause, we are just asking each team lead, or just everyone just pop in and kind of share, what did your team identify as your ideal state? And then if you can provide a short explanation of how your vision or your ideal state addresses the root cause that you identified.
Okay, well, I can start. Our goal is to establish a consistent, protected, and effective PLC process that empowers teachers to plan collaboratively, improve instruction, and positively impact student learning while respecting teacher time and well-being. And we feel that does everything. So
We just feel like that if everyone, when I talk about everyone, not just teachers, that they really understand the importance of PLC and the kind of work that happens in PLC, that indeed the ideal state then would be that teachers feel like their time, they don't have to do all this extra planning outside of the school day, but they're really making progress during the school day, which then ultimately has impact and student achievement. We can see the evidence of what's happening in PLC and our student achievement scores. Would anybody else from Temple like to add to that?
I just want to echo the work-life balance. I think you did a really good job of talking about that. It's just different now.
And I love that we
Okay.
talk so much about the fluidity of the cycles of learning. And that there is no black and white, this is what day we do this is the what day we do that, because that's not feasible. And to serve students well, we have to be fluid and kind of do things according to how our students lead us in their achievement.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that your ideal state is really holistic and including, like, yes, the time is protected in there, but then also it includes that teacher well-being and work-life balance, because that just throws another curveball. Like, yeah, you can have protected time, but then what does that mean in ensuring that teachers have that work-life balance, they have that satisfaction, they're going to stay in this position. So that adds kind of another layer to think about. Ladle, did you want to share?
Yes, we attacked it a tiny bit differently, even though we had the same kind of root cause analysis in discussing protecting our PLC time. And we really kind of landed on that we have like a systemic underinvestment in recruitment and retention and kind of that support of the staff. And so we want to look really closely at like how our turnover data of our academic coaches at the secondary level impacts that capacity building. We also want to look at, like, without addressing the root cause, we're going to continue to get the same results in our PLC, because right now we definitely, if PLC time remains to be kind of generic and it doesn't lack that department aligned focus and it doesn't build on teacher capacity, then we're still going to continue to get the turnover of our academic coaches that we're having. And even though we know that that's not necessarily every campus, we do feel like it's systemic in that we need to look at master scheduling. We need to look at PLCs being purposeful in improving instructional quality and student achievement. So we have the same root cause, but we have our ideal state. We feel like supporting is going to look different in what we're going to need as a district in next steps. Anybody from Lytle have something to add? Because they did all the hard work on this, and they're letting me speak on it, but they did the hard work the day that we did this. So anybody in Lytle want to add to that?
I think you said it well for us.
Great. And I love that they're different, because that means that you are taking into account all of the work that you and the teacher researchers did in phase one. It's not what you just both think your district needs, it's what the data is telling you. So that kind of proves that this is really being driven by the data. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you both for sharing out your ideal states. We're going to kind of talk now about the next steps and transitioning into the theory of action and kind of connecting the dots of everything that we've done in phase two so far, and phase one. So phase one was that needs assessment phase where we identified your district needs, going through collecting all that data, working with the teacher researchers. Now you've identified your root causes using that root cause analysis activity, and then you refine those through that systems level checklist. Now we're kind of jumping, and you guys have identified that ideal state, where your district wants to be. So now we have that missing piece kind of right here in the middle. And that's going to be your strategy that we're going to be working. And to kind of bridge the gap between here's our root cause, our problem statement, here's our ideal state. How are we going to connect these and say, this is what we can do to get from where we currently are to where we want to be? And to do with the strategy, we're going to be putting together a theory of action that's really going to tell this full story of this is where we're at, this is where we want to be, and this is what we're going to do to get us to that place and why we think that's going to be effective. So it's really kind of putting together the full narrative story before we get into the even more granular, detailed implementation plan. So the first step is really outlining, making sure we're all on the same page of this is our theory of action and why we think if we implement this strategy, we will see the change that we want and we'll get to our ideal state. So now we're going to jump into theory of action 101. As outlined in the slide, this is just part one. So we're going to be going over kind of the introduction to the theory of action. And then your homework per se will be just finishing a couple sections of that We'll talk about that, but then we're going to come back during our September training. It's crazy to say September, but September training, and finish out that theory of action. So again, this is a two-part thing. Right now, we're kind of introducing it, really getting into like, let's start talking about strategy. And then that second training will go more into more in depth of that. First, I'm going to share in the chat this template for you all. So first, defining what is a theory of action. It's really just a logical visual explanation of how and why a strategy is expected to lead to the desired outcomes that you want to achieve. It's really thinking of it as like a logical check of this is what we say we want to do, why we think we're going to get there, and it makes logical sense. So being able to work both forwards and backwards of tracing that. The different elements, there's the if. So if we implement X strategy, then we'll see the impact on Y condition leading to Z outcome. So as you guys were kind of even talking about your ideal states, a lot of them were kind of listed off, and I was hearing those like if then leading to statements of if we do this, then X will happen, which will lead to this long-term outcome of teacher well-being, teacher recruitment and retention, like the long-term shifts that we're hoping to see. The actual theory of change, which again, I shared in the chat, here's the template here. Again, a lot of this work you've already done. We're going to go through this on the next couple slides, but it's really organized around a problem statement, which is your root cause, or problem statement, then your root cause of why you believe that's happening, your ideal state, the strategy that you want to enact, the assumptions that you need to hold in order for that strategy to be true or to reach your ideal state, and then your outcomes that you're hoping to achieve. So right now we're going to go through the first four, I think it's 4 pieces of the theory of action. Again, this first one is the problem statement. So the question that's being addressed in this is what system level need are you trying to solve? So really the starting probe for that is we identified that XYZ. That's really kind of the summary of your needs assessment. So an example would be that teachers lack sufficient uninterrupted planning time due to inconsistent meeting structures and coverage expectations. So again, if you, the best you're able to really summarize all the work that happened in that phase 1 of the needs assessment, this is what you identified that you're bringing in. You really want this to be strong again, because this in the root cause is what's rooting your theory of action. The next piece is the root cause. So what we just talked about. So what is driving the problem at a systems level? The probe for this or starting prompt is we believe that this is happening because XYZ. Following that same example, school schedules and coverage systems prioritize operational needs over instructional time. So for this example district, that's the root cause that they came to. The next piece is ideal state. So what does success look like 18 to 24 months from now? So again, this is the work that you already did as a district that you're going to be able to just copy over into this. The prompt for this in our ideal state, XYZ. In the example is that teachers have consistent protected blocks of time for collaborative and individual planning enabled by clear scheduling policies and adequate staff coverage. So you can see how it's just kind of continuing on and telling the story of this is what we identified. This is the root cause we saw. This is where we want to be. And then, like I said, that bridge to connect us from that root cause and problem statement to where we want to be is this strategy. Oops. So the strategy is what system, the question answered in this is what systems level actions or interventions will you implement? The prompt being, therefore, we will, and with the example, redesign the master schedule and staffing model to guarantee protected planning time and to reduce reactive coverage assignments. So we're gonna jump into talking about how do we get to this strategy conversation. There's so many different things we could be implementing. You guys probably already have some things in your mind, but we also want to show you based on like best practices. What are some other districts doing? Some ways to kind of review that. So we have a new tool that we're going to be sharing with you, which is the Teacher Time Study Resource Library. So this is a big Google Sheet that you'll be using to collaboratively identify a systems level action that you want to implement. So I am going to pass it over to either LaTanya or Sarah now to kind of walk you through the resource library, give you an idea. Your homework as a team is going to be to each individually like go through this, but we would just want to introduce you to the tool right now.
I was talking and then realized I was on. Okay, thank you so much, Alex. So I'm gonna drop the tool in the chat. Let me make sure I have the right one. You can click on the link. Does it open for everyone? And then I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Good, okay. So we're so excited. We've spent a lot of time on this resource library, and we are excited to be able to share it with you all today. So my screen, if you can see my screen, this is what we're calling the Teacher Time Study Resource Library. And so when we've talked about strategy, this library is a host of different strategies that you can use in response to like the problem that you're experiencing in your district, and then we have solutions that are offered. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through this library. Feel free to stop me to ask questions if you have questions. So the first tab is a table of contents. And so the table of contents, you can see all of the problems, all of the needs that are listed, and it's organized by a problem of need. So example, administrative burden, compensation, increase in student achievement, not enough time, school culture, student support, teacher training and support. Each of these problems are also a tab at the bottom. So if you just wanted to go straight to a tab, not enough time, you can do that. Or you can go to the table of contents. You can filter it by the task that you want to see. So if we just want to do not enough time, well, increase student achievement, let's take these all off and then do okay. You can filter it that way. And then you can see it. You can click on the link to go straight to that actual tab if you just didn't want to click on the tab. So there are a number of ways to get to the problem that you want to see. So let me unfilter that. Let me go back to all of the checks. And then there's a solution. So the solutions is the name to the actual program that could be a solution to the problem that you're addressing. So if you go to, I'm going to go to not enough time because that has come up for us, right? And so if you go to example, not enough time. The problem is not enough time. In this case, an example would be additional school day. A better example for you all might be master schedule. As a master schedule, there is a link here. We have linked here the different links to the program, to the actual program. So in this case, there is a link that will go, I'm sorry for scrolling so fast, that will go to, in this case, Timely. And so Timely is a tool that you can use in response to master scheduling. It's an AI scheduling solution. And so that link will take you straight to Timely. We also created a column that describes what this is. So for example, Timely is the redesigning the master schedule can solve for several identified needs, including increased time for teacher collaboration, teacher training support, and meeting the academic or behavioral needs for students. So it's a description of the actual tool or what we're referencing. The columns up here are benefits for the LEA, the outcomes for students, outcomes for teachers, supporting all learners. How does this actual program or grant opportunity or tool support all learners? There's also a section here, a column here that talks about TAs that support it sometimes, or organizations that support it. There may or may not be someone listed for that. Grant eligibility. So if it is a grant, this column will tell you what do you need to do to be eligible for that grant. So Timely is not an example for that, but if you wanted to do additional school year, you could go to this column to see what do you have to do to be eligible for that grant. And then these are just additional links. So in the first column, column K, we linked straight to the program or the resource. Here are just additional links that we may just link to be a resource. So it may talk about different districts who are using the tool. So we'll just link additional resources. Let me see if I missed anything.
While you're looking, I'm going to jump in real quick and just give a few flags. One, we all know that we're in a very special time right now with the ledge session just passing. So if you do see something that's from TEA, just want to flag that it could change because of any bill or thing that passed. The programs will update and they're in that updating mode right now. So we just kind of had this time where we're overlapping with them. So just want to say that we think we have it all right, but there could always be a change or something that we missed. So for example, ADSE or TIA or enhanced TIA, those are all kind of changing based on the ledge session and what passed in law. So want to give that flag. Also, if you do find a resource that you want to try, like Timely is a new software that we have been open to at the agency, and it's supposed to really help secondary master scheduling.
We use it. It's wonderful.
Perfect. So just want to say that if you have grant funds from this teacher time study grant and you want to use your funds, you are allowed to do that. I've also put an errata in there for capital outlay, so you can buy things like equipment. If there's another change that needs to be made within the grant, I can do that. If you want to do a budget amendment, we can do that. So just know that these funds are available in helping you think about your solutions. If it's not a grant option and it's something like Timely, we want you to experiment and do what you need for your district. So I'm happy to use some of those funds if those are still available within what you've got budgeted.
And while folks are jumping in, Latanya, thank you so much for describing this. If you go back to any of the solutions, I'll give one quick voiceover. So like Latanya shared, if there is funding, there is a link in like a separate grant program. There's a link in that column, but do check out all the resources to the right because there are often more resources. If there's not a link in that first or that third column really, that says grant funding, just like Deborah shared with us, you might still be able to use these grant resources to support you in that engagement. So it's just a direct link if there's a separate grant program, but all the resources are still repeated to the right. And then there is a final, if you go all the way to the final tab, Latanya, if for some reason you're a maximalist, you can view them all in a single space. It's just that we have them separated by tab to help kind of like reduce what you're thinking about in a single moment. But if you'd rather see it all together, you still have that option.
All right, before we jump into the next section, again, your homework that we'll cover in a couple minutes is going to be to review that collaboratively. You can really do it individually first and then collaboratively, but any overarching questions at first are coming to mind as Latanya was walking through that resource. No. All right, so now we're going to touch on section 4, which is talking about the role that the teacher researcher is going to play during the remainder of the project. So as a reminder, the teacher researcher had a key pivotal role during phase 1. They were really doing all that data collection, synthesizing the data, kind of summarizing what was needed by the teachers themselves. And they're still going to play a role throughout the remainder of the project. It's just going to look a little bit different. So we're kind of reframing this as, instead of being like a researcher role, they're now going to take the lens of a consultant role. And so during the remainder of the project, the role of the teacher researcher will evolve to a consultant role. This is going to entail moving from actually doing the work to guiding others to do the work. So it's really a mindset shift from managing to influencing. They're going to be a thought partner, not the sole problem solver. And they're going to be balancing expertise with facilitation. During the upcoming training, which is in 2 weeks, or is it next? No, next week. We'll be covering this in detail with teacher researchers as well, around kind of what their role is going to look like, but also want to preview with you all so you know what to expect and how to continue to involve your teacher researchers. And so what this will look like in actual practice is that we are, they'll be expected to attend and participate in the DQI team meetings that are focused on those milestone deliverables. So these will include the theory of action during phase 2, and then the implementation plan during phase 3. During the meetings, they're going to use this consultancy protocol to ensure that the teacher and teacher voice are being represented. So we're going to be talking through them around kind of how, when they're in these meetings, it's kind of questioning and making sure that teacher voice and that the teacher experience is really being addressed in like the theory of action, in the implementation plan. They were always bringing it back to what the data was saying that was collected from the teachers, as well as these teacher researchers, teacher consultants now, they're teachers themselves. So they have that voice, that experience. So really making sure that everything that we're planning is rooted in the teacher experience. So this will involve them being attending the meeting in September, where you'll be reviewing that final theory of action. They'll kind of be that, again, that checker of saying, is this going to is this viable for the teachers to do the strategy? Do they see the connection? Does it make sense to them? Does it match the teacher experience and what they're experiencing? And then similarly in probably November, December, where you'll be reviewing your final implementation plan. Again, the teacher researcher coming in and saying, is this matching the teacher experience? Is this feasible? Is this going to work? Are they seeing the dots that you're connecting? Before I jump into next steps, does anyone have any questions around this teacher researcher role?
So have the teacher researchers been added to those meetings, or have those meetings not been set up yet?
So those meetings are scheduled by your team. So good question. They're not expected to come to these trainings that we lead. This is
Okay.
the DQI team. It's more so when you are, your district team is having your time, like where after this, you'll be working on your theory of action part 1. And then they're not expected to come to that one, but then after our next training, you'll have your theory of action part 2, where you'll be kind of working through your full theory of action. They would be expected to come to that one to make sure, again, that theory of action is representing the teacher voice. So it's more of what cadence your internal team sets the meetings for. They do not have to come to these Maya-led trainings or those coaching calls. Any other questions? And again, we will be covering the trainings on the 27th. We'll be covering, again, in greater detail. The full training is kind of focused on what their role is going to look like. And one of their next steps is going to be to reach out to the DQI team lead to get on your meeting schedule. So that'll be kind of a collaborative effort to make sure that they are going to be able to attend that meeting or those 2 meetings. All right, so first, what's coming up? Our next training together is on September 5th, and that's when we'll be going through building your theory of action part 2. So really that will be us talking about what strategies you all identified, and then talking about very high level outcomes making sure, again, we're able to measure and look at the change based on the data we've already collected. You all will have your next coaching call on either September 25th or 26th. That's when we'll be going through kind of your full theory of action. And then on September 30th is when that final milestone deliverable of that theory of action is due and has to be uploaded to the information hub. So for next steps, the first one, which I think we completed, but if you have to do any more discussions, is completing the checklist for each identified root cause, ensuring that each are systems level, and then if needed, refine those identified root causes. And then 3 and 4 are the bigger ones. So as a team, we want you to work collaboratively to review that teacher time study resource library and identify potential strategies to transition from your current state to your ideal state that we discussed. And then we also want you to complete the following sections of the theory of action. All of these sections you already have done. So it's basically just moving them into one common place. So identifying your problem statement, that's your summary of your needs assessment phase. Your root cause, which you identified from that root cause analysis activity, and then your ideal state. So it's really aligning everything in there. Again, during the next training, just come prepared to talk about the either strategy or potential strategies that your team identified. And we'll talk through at that point how to be thinking about the outcomes that we want to achieve based on this. Any questions about your next steps? All right, well, that is the conclusion of today's training. As always, if you can please complete the exit ticket. Let me put it in the chat. That again just helps us record who attended the training, as well as gives us some feedback. Oh, that's the wrong exit ticket. Do not click that one, sorry. Hold on. Latanya, can you get that from the link in either the note catcher or the slide deck?
I've got it.
Thank you. So if you complete the exit ticket, and then as always, all of this information will be uploaded to the information hub by the end of the day. So we'll have this recording and everything. If you have any questions as we prepare for that next training, that's still the wrong one. I don't know why. Here, I'll find it. Again, as we're preparing for that next training, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the theory of action or the resource hub as well. Maybe it's just naming it wrong. Yep, it's just naming it wrong. Sorry. Those are the correct ones that have been shared.
And thanks for your patience here. We'll fix it on the back end.
Yeah, I don't know why it's named the wrong thing. Awesome. But otherwise, if you have any questions, please feel free to hang around. Otherwise, it was good to see you all. Happy almost first day of school and happy second week of school. Bye.